Okay, so we're going to do a couple of videos today, and the first one I'm going to do is probably not going to be that long. This is not my usual unboxing video, but this is a video where I'm going to talk about some older toys that I got off of eBay today, and they are from the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves line. Now, McFarlane Toys recently, within the past couple of years, had started their own revival of superpowers, which, of course, was one of my favorite toy lines when I was a kid. I was always a big fan of DC Comics. So, having a line based on those DC superheroes, of course, was very exciting to me. And I loved the removable fabric capes and the power actions and everything like that. But all good things must come to an end, and superpowers eventually did end, I think, a little too early. I think if they had maybe the sales had declined a little bit, but if they had kept up the ghost, just a few years later, the 1989 Batman movie was going to come out, and that would have given quite a boost, I think, to the superpowers line. As it was, since Kenner let the license lapse, it wound up going to Toy Biz, and Toy Biz did their own series of Batman and DC superheroes action figures, which were, if I'm being honest, fairly lackluster. I mean, I know a lot of us, myself included, have some nostalgic memories of getting those figures in 1989, but anybody who tries to tell you that they could hold a candle to the Kenner superpowers line is fooling themselves. I'm sorry. It was not as good as that particular line of figures. However, since the line wound up being so lackluster and Kenner wised up and realized that they were missing out on some bat bucks, they bought the rights back to do Batman with the Dark Knight collection. Unfortunately, it would be a few years before they would get around to doing any other DC characters besides Batman himself. But considering how they still had all the molds and sculpts for various DC figures, they decided to recycle them for their new Batman line, which, honestly, it made sense. You've got a Batman action figure already. We just tweak him a little bit, give him a new head that looks a little bit more like Michael Keaton, maybe give him the scalloping at the end of the cowl like he had in the movie, maybe put some details on his boots, give him a more accurate to the film belt buckle, and voila, we got a brand new Michael Keaton Batman figure. Likewise with the Joker. We've already got a Joker figure. Just make a new Jack Nicholson head and pop that sucker on there. Yeah, he's a little skinnier than Jack was in the movie. He's a little more stocky, but the kids aren't going to care. They just want a Joker action figure. He's going to be skinnier than usual. They're not going to mind. We still got the old Batcopter mold from the Superpowers line. Does it come in black? Well, it does now. They'll reuse one of those Silverhawk jets. These kids aren't going to know the difference. That'll help tide them over till next year when we finally have the proper movie Batmobile and Batwing ready. So this was a pretty successful strategy for Kenner. It sold him a lot of Batman action figures. It got some more use out of some older molds that he just previously had sitting around doing nothing. And then when they started doing new stuff, like the 89 Batmobile and the actual Batwing from the movie, and the Wayne Manor Command Center, as they called it, with the Batcave and everything, and led into Batman Returns. That was a pretty successful line. So yeah, it was a big hit for Kenner. Now you might be wondering, why are you blabbering on and on about Batman? I know you're obsessed with Batman, Alan. You don't have to talk about him all the time. I came here because I was promised Kenner's Robin Hood. Why are you talking about Batman? Well, I promise you it's relevant. Because since the Batman line was so successful, and since it recycled a lot of stuff from Superpowers, I'm guessing that's what led directly to this Kenner Robin Hood line. Because Robin Hood, of course, was a movie that was put out by Warner Brothers. And if you look at how the marketing and everything was done for this movie, it's pretty obvious that they were kind of trying to follow that Batman formula. and make another Batman, basically, as far as like, you know, the trying to basically reverse engineer what had made Batman successful. So like, oh, Prince had a hit Batman soundtrack. Let's get some other who's a big pop star right now? Bryan Adams. Yeah, get him to do a song for Robin Hood. We can put that on the radio, put that on the soundtrack, sell a lot of things. Oh, Topps did trading cards. Those sold gangbusters for Topps. Yeah, get them on the phone. Tell them we're doing a Robin Hood movie, and Kevin Costner is going to be in it, who's like, you know, one of the biggest stars in the world right now. You know, tell them we got Hans Gruber from Die Hard. He's going to be the sheriff of Nottingham. We got the guy from Driving Miss Daisy. This is going to be killer. You know, the chick from The Abyss. She's going to be Maid Marian. You know, we got the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway to be Friar Tuck. It's going to be awesome. And of course, Kenner was doing Batman figures at the time, so it only naturally, you know, I'm not sure who approached who in this case. Maybe Kenner went to Warner Brothers, maybe Warner Brothers went to Kenner, one or the other, and was like, "Hey, we got this new Robin Hood movie coming out. It's probably going to be big, you know, maybe even Batman big. It's got Kevin Costner in it. So let's do some Robin Hood action figures." And I'm sure part of the reason for Kenner doing this is because they figured, hey, we got all these Green Arrow molds sitting around we can do something with. Just crank out some more figures out of that mold. You know, give him a new head that looks like Kevin Costner. Maybe add some details to the boots. We don't need to change the belt buckle. He can have a G for a belt buckle. That's fine. So, so most of the figures in the Robin Hood line were again recycled from Superpowers characters, and the most obvious of which being Robin Hood himself was made from Green Arrow. And the other two figures that I had in this particular lot were Azim, who reuses the torso of, you know, Shazam, you know, Captain Marvel from the Superpowers line. And last but not least, in this assortment of figures that I got today, is the Sheriff of Rottingham. I'm sorry, he was the Sheriff of Nottingham in the actual movie. He was the Sheriff of Rottingham in the Mel Brooks version, Robin Hood Men in Tights, which, you know, I enjoyed that movie even more than this one, but that's beside the point. So, and of course, the Sheriff recycles most of the parts from Lex Luthor, and we'll talk about his arms in a minute, but these are basically retooled Green Arrow arms again. And we'll talk about the head when I get to talking about the figure, but this head is reused for something else as well. So without further ado, let's start talking about these Green Arrow figures. I'm sorry, these Robin Hood figures. Now, the most obvious one, if you're going to reuse Robin Hood parts, you know, I can't talk. If you're going to reuse Superpowers parts in Green Arrow, I'm getting so confused. It's all so confused. Okay, if you're going to reuse Superpowers parts in a Robin Hood line, obviously using Green Arrow for Robin Hood is a no-brainer. And we can see that he does look quite a bit how Kevin Costner looked in the movie. You know, he's got a great head sculpt. Now, they did have, I believe, an earlier head sculpt, which did not look like Kevin Costner. But they went back to the drawing board and did a running change really early. My guess would be initially they did not have rights approval for Kevin Costner's likeness. Like either he hadn't signed off on it yet or wasn't satisfied with the first sculpt they came up with and they had to go with another one. So the earliest figures have a head sculpt that only kind of vaguely looks like Kevin Costner. And I don't have that particular Robin Hood or the Aquaman figure to compare it to. But I suspect, and I'm going to at some point compare both of them, I suspect that Robin Hood reused the Aquaman head, but just kind of sculpted his hair longer. So even though this does pretty much look like Robin Hood in the movie, Kenner did go the extra mile and gave him a soft goods vest. Now, one of the interesting things about this line is they had a lot of soft goods accessories, which you'll notice more of those in a minute. But unfortunately, my Robin Hood did not come with his vest, but he did come with his bow and one of his arrows. One of the reasons that I bought this particular lot is because all the figures came with their weapons. And it seems to me like if they're going to be missing anything, they're going to be missing their weapons. So he does have 2 of his arrows missing, because I believe he came with 3 arrows, and this one only has 1. But you win some, you lose some. At least he still has his bow, and that's the most important part. Now, the great thing is, oh, hey, look, here's my superpowers green arrow right now, so we can compare. Now, the great thing is, I do have these files that I got online where a guy made a reproduction Robin Hood bow and arrow set, and I used it for my superpowers. A lot of people are like, hey, he did an actual green arrow set. Why didn't you just use that? Well, I like the Robin Hood one because you can flick the arrow out of the bow, and I think that's really cool. So it actually kind of shoots. Like, that's neat. So I do believe there's supposed to be an elastic string that attached on at these. You can see where there's the little fork at the top, and the elastic string was kind of tied in a knot and fit over the end of it. But obviously that got lost really easily. So Robin Hood has a bow, which, as I pointed out before, you can put the arrow in there and kind of flick it out like that. I was trying to be really careful to aim somewhere where I knew that it would go so I didn't lose it. And it didn't go too far. I just kind of gently flicked it. Also, in addition to that, you can see there's a little clip here at the side, so we can insert the arrow in there. I find it works best if you actually insert the arrow and slide it through, so you can display him as having the arrow in the bow if you choose to do that. So that's pretty neat. Comparing, well, I'm going to set their weapons aside for now. Comparing the 2 figures, you'll see that it is pretty much the same exact torso on Robin Hood that was previously used on Green Arrow. He even still has a G on his belt buckle, just like Green Arrow has. He has the same sort of distinct turtleneck, the same sort of flares at the shoulders. It's the same figure pretty much from the waist up. Now, the legs are slightly different because Green Arrow originally had knee articulation, as you can see, and the Robin Hood figures did not have knee articulation. They're plain 5-point articulation figures, but you can see it's basically the same sculpt, at least down to the boot. It's got the same trunk line and everything in there. The shoe part of the boot looks the same to me, the same sort of sole, the same sort of wrinkles at the ankles. However, Robin Hood does actually add a little bit of extra detail by adding these kind of gray straps around the sides of the boots. Now, Kenner being Kenner, and again, trying to duplicate the success of their Batman line with this Robin Hood line, they did do a variant Robin Hood figure that was called Crossbow Robin Hood. And instead of coming with a soft goods vest like this one came with, he came with a soft goods cloak with a hood. And it's the same exact sculpt, only it's painted different. And for some reason, they decided to paint him with short sleeves and just little bracers around the wrist, even though he's got these really long archery gloves. So that looked rather odd. So yeah, this Robin Hood that I have specifically, he came with his quiver, and it's just a little soft goods quiver, and it looks like at some point the strap to it broke, and the child just taped it back together, is what it looks like. And I love finding things like this on secondhand toys. Yeah, it's nice to have them like all minty and everything, like they just came off the card. But if the part of me is like, these are child's playthings, and I played with a lot of these toys as a child, and to me, every kind of nook, every kind of paint rub, every kind of scrape, every kind of little nick where they slam their figure too hard together, that's kind of part of the figure's history. So I appreciate that. And I like the fact that this kid played with Robin Hood hard enough that his quiver broke, and he didn't want to have a Robin Hood without a quiver, so he taped it back together. Now, I have no idea what would have happened with this kid's vest. He probably took it off and set it aside at some point and just forgot about it. But, he's still got the bow and the arrow and the quiver, so that's enough for a kid to play with. And like I said, while that's not exactly what Kevin Costner looked like in the movie, it's close enough to what Kevin Costner looked like in the movie, even without the extra soft goods vest, that I could see a kid being happy with this. So, pretty cool figure, great likeness of Kevin Costner. Let's move on to Azim. Now, Azim was probably the main reason that I bought this set, because, like I said, all these figures come with these soft goods parts, and the soft goods parts tend to get lost. So a lot of times you wind up with a figure with nothing on him. Azim originally had like a pleather sort of coat, robe, whatever you want to call it. You can see this one's fraying a little bit, so it's not in the best of shape. And since it was pleather, like this stuff just disintegrated, and it's hard for me to find like a loose example of Azim online at all without at least some amount of fraying to his cloak. So that's unfortunate. So, and it feels really gross. It feels kind of sticky and tacky. So I'm probably going to wind up trying to find a way actually to peel the rest of the pleather off. Maybe like stick some tape on there and see if I can just get it off of the figure, rather than having all this pleather that's peeling off anyway. So let's go ahead and we're going to take off all of his everything. This one had most of his accessories. The only thing I can think of that's missing is he's supposed to have like a sash type belt to hold his robe on, and that's gone. So I don't have a Shazam figure, unfortunately. I would love to have a Shazam figure, but he's really expensive. And I remember looking for Shazam when I was a kid and having no luck at all. Very disappointed that I was never able to get that figure. But Azim does reuse the torso of Shazam, and he also reuses, like the Sheriff of Nottingham, basically these are the same arms that Robin Hood came with, that came from Green Arrow, only this time they've resculpted them so they have bracers around the wrists and don't have any of the detail of the archery gloves going up the elbows. So this is where I ask, why didn't they use these arms on the crossbow Robin Hood, since that was how he was designed, was just to have wrist bracers and no long archery gloves and short sleeves? It would have looked way better if they had to use these arms, but they didn't. So now the unfortunate thing about the Green Arrow arms on a figure like Azim or on the Sheriff of Nottingham is that you can see that the joints on the torso are straight up and down, and that causes these arms to look a little stiff on the figure. Whereas on Robin Hood / Green Arrow, you can see the arm joints are like a slight bit of an angle. That was to accommodate Green Arrow's, mine doesn't really work so well anymore, but Green Arrow's archery feature. Like you squeeze his legs, he's supposed to draw his bow and arrow. Like I said, mine doesn't work that well anymore, but I remember it being pretty impressive when I was a kid. Likewise, Robin is, sculpted in such a way where like he should be able to hold a bow and arrow in like an archery type pose, but unfortunately, like the arrow, the bow fits kind of awkwardly in his hand, so it's hard to really get it into that pose. I think they gave it a shot though; they put some effort into it. So, but yeah, that's why Azim has those kind of stiff looking arms. I suspect, and I don't have it to compare, but I suspect these are also modified versions of Captain Marvel's legs as well. So I'll probably try to get some more of these to do like a cheap Captain Marvel custom. Since I was never able to get the superpowers version, I can make one out of Azim. That should be fun. I do have files that I got on cults3d.com to print out a superpowers Captain Marvel, and I have done that. But honestly, those figures are more intended for display than play, and I would want a Captain Marvel that a kid could actually play with theoretically. So I'm probably gonna do a 3D print of that Shazam head and put it onto one of these bodies. But I know I've got at least one more Azim coming that doesn't have any accessories at all. But I'm gonna go ahead and put everything back on him now that we've been over everything. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that this Azim comes with most of the accessories that he's supposed to come with, but not all of them. And something that I noticed as I'm looking at this is he does have like these 2 notches in the back of his robe that are cut in there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but right where my finger is poking, there's a couple of notches. And I suspect that you're supposed to put the sash belt through that and tie it all together, probably to keep the kid from losing it. But obviously this kid lost it anyway. So, but it is neat that he comes with his robe. It's just like I said, it's kind of disgusting because all the vinyl is peeling off of it, and this head wrap thing, it's a little frayed in the front, and the elastic seems like it's a little stretched out, but it's supposed to kind of fit over his head like that, where like the elastic kind of stretches around his whole head. But since it's kind of frayed and the elastic is all worn out, it doesn't really fit on his head that well. So I've been just kind of pulling it over the back of his head like that, and I think that still looks pretty good. So I'm probably just gonna see if I can get like some ribbon or something. Next time I go to Walmart, check the hobby department and get myself some ribbon, and then just have that to tie around his waist, and that'll make for a good belt for now. It's too bad he's missing that accessory because, like I said, that's what holds the robe open, or the coat, or whatever you want to call it, and it would also give you storage for the scimitar that he comes with, which is really awesome. Like I said, one of the reasons I bought this particular lot is because they all came with their weapons. Even though Robin Hood's missing 2 of his arrows, he still has at least 1 arrow and a bow. And likewise, Azim came with his scimitar, which to me seems like it's not a very easy part to find. Most Azims that I see are either just like completely without any accessories at all, or if they do have the accessories, they just have the robe and that's it. So pretty awesome. And Morgan Freeman is one of my favorite actors of all time. I mean, like Morgan Freeman, I've never seen give a bad performance in any movie. He's a great actor. So, and I've been a fan of his since The Electric Company. That's how far back I go with Morgan Freeman. So, the likeness on Morgan Freeman is pretty decent. It's not like an exact likeness, but it looks enough like him. I can tell it's supposed to be Morgan Freeman, even though it's not quite as dead on as Kevin Costner. But if you want to talk about truly awful likenesses, let's move on to the Sheriff of Nottingham, shall we? Now, in a line which for the most part has really good actor likenesses, you've got a great likeness on Kevin Costner and a great likeness on Friar Tuck. Both of those, I think, look exactly like the actors that play them in the movie. Then you have, Morgan Freeman is passable. Christian Slater is Will Scarlet, passable. And, the Dark Warrior isn't supposed to be any particular actor, so we can put that aside. Little John looks like a guy with long hair and a beard. I guess it looks a little bit like him in the face, but they didn't quite get his hair right. I don't think it's like his hair in that was more like this big poofy mane, and it doesn't quite capture that. But my favorite character in the whole movie, Sheriff Nottingham, the character that makes it worth me watching this movie. If I watch this movie, it's because I want to see Alan Rickman play Sheriff in Nottingham. I mean, there's a lot of great performances in this movie, a lot of characters that I like. A lot of actors that I like as those characters. And then you have Kevin Costner, who honestly, I feel like he was kind of the weak link in the movie. I think a lot of people feel that way. And it's not like his acting was bad so much as like, he's just too American. Robin Hood should be a Brit. It's like, and I'm as patriotic as they come. I love America, but Robin Hood's a British hero. He should be British. Sorry, Kevin Costner, if you're watching this. I thought your acting was fine. It's just you just seem too American. So loved him in Man of Steel. He was a good Jonathan Kent. I like that. But yeah, this is not a head sculpt of Alan Rickman to begin with. This is a recycle of one of the villains from RoboCop and the Ultra Police. I believe the character's name was Chainsaw. And again, I was happy to have the sword for this. This sword seems a lot more common in what I'm looking at on eBay than Azim's scimitar. But still, if you're going to find a Sheriff of Nottingham, if he comes with anything at all, he's probably just going to come with this cape. And this cape, I don't know, the clip doesn't hold it very tightly to his neck. And I think that's just because he's got a head that's not really supposed to go on this neck, because it's a head from RoboCop. And if you look at it without the cape on there, you can see that there's some space in between there. So it doesn't even really go on all the way. This torso was reused from Lex Luthor. And this says on here, it's got sculpted in the back, copyright MCP, copyright MC. probably Morgan Creek Films and Warner Brothers. Kenner CE China. So the back of this is resculpted because Lex Luthor had a little button in the back that was supposed to accommodate his power action. I have a Lex Luthor on the way, so when I get the Lex Luthor, I'll probably do a video where I compare these two. Again, reuses the same arms that Azim has. They share the same arms. The legs are mostly the legs from Lex Luthor, but they have completely resculpted boots. Rather than the armored boots that Luthor had, these are more like leathery boots. And now's as good a time as any to talk about the articulation on these figures, because it's the same for all of them. Arms rotate all the way around at the shoulder. Head rotates all the way around at the top. And the legs move up about the far, legs move back about that far. So you can do the splits no problem, but just, forward and backward instead of side to side. And the rest of the articulation is the same. It's basically 90s, 80s, more like, since these are recycled from the 80s type of action figure articulation. I do wish that this cape fit on him a bit better, a little more snugly. But this cape's kind of ratchet anyway. You can see it's all fraying and everything. It's in really rough shape. So probably what I'm going to do is wind up sacrificing this particular cape so that I can use it as the cape collar for this superpower Superman that I'm going to try to restore that I got recently. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Kenner's Robin Hood line, at least as far as this assortment that I got. But I've got more on the way because I'm going to try to collect this whole line. And, I want to have some loose examples, but I might get some of the carded figures too. I remember really enjoying these figures when I was a kid, when the movie had first come out. And to me, the fact that they reused a lot of superpowers parts, that was kind of icing on the cake. Like that wasn't a drawback for me. That was a plus because I loved superpowers so much. So it was kind of a way of bringing back superpowers, kind of like how the Dark Knight collection brought back superpowers. This brought back other aspects of superpowers. But one figure that I really wanted from this line that I was never able to find was Friar Tuck. And not just because, I enjoyed this movie and was enjoying the action figures, and Friar Tuck is an important character in the legend of Robin Hood, just overall. But I was also a big fan of Whose Line Is It Anyway, which was running on Comedy Central at the time. So, hey, it's the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway? He's Friar Tuck. That's awesome. So I was looking for that action figure in particular, but was never able to find it. But I do have one on the way that I found on Etsy, of all places. I'd never ordered anything from Etsy before, but I saw an ad on, I think, Facebook that had some Robin Hood figures from Etsy, and I'm like, I might as well look and see what they have. And I was able to get a complete Little John and an almost complete Friar Tuck. Like, I think the only thing Friar Tuck is missing is the thing that ties his robe, the little rope that ties his robe shut. And Little John had all of his accessories. So I'll have those on the way shortly. I've got another assortment that's going to have Will Scarlet and the Dark Warrior, who is supposed to be, I guess, the Nottingham's henchman. But and then a couple of more Kevin Costner Robin Hoods. So I'll do another video when those show up. But that's the end for this one. I'm going to go ahead and put a stop to this and go use the restroom real quick. Take me a little break there. And I'll be right back to open up Arlene Martian Manhunter, who's been a long time coming. So stay tuned for that. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, well, I mean, just keep an eye out. I'm going to be back in like 5 minutes. But like and subscribe and leave a comment, all the fun stuff. Hit the little bell. That'll remind you when I'm doing a video. And that's pretty much it for this episode of Robin Hood Retrospective. We will talk to you next time. Bye.